Once, deep in the forest, there lived a family, a woodcutter, his wife, and their daughter, little Mary. They were happy. But tragedy came to that family. Unfortunately, the mother grew sick and died. At first, the woodcutter took care of Mary as best as he could, but eventually he remarried. And Mary's new stepmother also had a daughter, and the two of them came to live in the cottage in the forest. And both the stepmother and the stepsister hated Mary. She was a gentle, sweet, pretty little girl, and she was the apple of her father's eye. And they were jealous. So at first, they gave Mary all the hard jobs to do. If there was some milk to be brought from a long way off, if there was some dirty cleaning job to do, as often as they could, all day long, they found work for Mary to do. Now, she did her best to please her stepmother and her stepsister, but she knew that they didn't like her. So she didn't like them. It was difficult. As she grew, she became more beautiful, and this incensed the stepmother and stepsister, and so they decided that they would be much better off without her, and they devised a plan to get rid of Mary. Now, it was in the depths of winter, just at the very start of January. Very cold, very dark. And one evening, the woodcutter, the father, said, "Tomorrow I have to work in a part of the forest which is far from here. It's too far to get back before it's dark, so I will stay in a cabin over there and come back the next day." And early the next morning, he hugged Mary, he said goodbye, and he left. Then, when it was starting to get dark, the sun had set, the first stars were out, the mother came to Mary and said, "I want to make strawberry pie." She gave her a basket and she said, "Now put on your cape, put on your boots, and go off and bring me strawberries for the pie." Mary did as she was told. She put on her boots, she put on her cape, and she went out into the cold. It wasn't very long before it was completely dark. By starlight, she made her way through the trees and the snow, but she knew that she would not find strawberries at that time of year. She didn't know what to do. Eventually, she sat down on a log and she began to cry because she knew that they hated her. When she looked up, she saw between the trees ahead of her a fire blazing, a bonfire. And she was so cold that she thought to herself, well, at least if I went over there, I will get warm by the fire. So, making her way towards the fire, she came into the opening, and there was this great fire, and sitting around it were 12 little men. 12 little woodland elves. And one of them stood up and he said, "Come in, Mary, come in by the fire. We've been expecting you. My name is January, and we are the woodland elves who are the 12 months of the year. Come and sit down and get warm." And they took off her cape and they dried it by the fire, and then they put it around her, and they made her feel so welcome and safe. "Now," said January, "we've been watching you since you were little, and we've always kept our distance. We've never interfered. But now we see what your stepmother and stepsister are up to, and we decided it's time that we did something. So what is it that she's sent you out here to do?" And Mary held up her little basket and she said, "She's told me to get a basket of strawberries. And I know I can't find strawberries in January." The small man called over to another one of the elves and said, "July, come here. Take this basket of Mary's and go and get strawberries. This is a job for you." And he came over, he took the basket and he disappeared. And 2 seconds later, he was back again. And the basket was full of the most beautiful, huge, juicy strawberries. And January said, "Now, Mary, you take them back. July, take a coal from the fire and guide Mary back. Show her the way from here to the cabin. And Mary, if there's anything else that you ever need, come and find us. We'll be here." And all the little woodland elves cheered goodbye to her, and she followed July, who was holding up the burning coal. She followed him all the way back, close to the cabin, and then he bid her good night and left. And she went up to the cabin door, and she opened it, and she went in, and the stepmother came over and said, "Mary, you're back." Now they both thought she would be gone, lost in the forest, eaten by animals. They didn't care, but they did not expect to see her back. And then the stepmother looked in the basket and said, "You've got the strawberries." And she snatched the basket out of her hand and she stormed into the kitchen. So, for that moment at least, things went fine. The next day, the father came back, and Mary decided not to say anything about what had happened. She didn't want to stir up trouble, so she stayed quiet. And that evening, he said, "I'm going to be away for 3 nights now. There's such a lot to do over there in that part of the forest." And then he said to Mary, "So listen to your mother, be good." And she said, I'll be good, Daddy." And then she said to her wife and her stepdaughter, "Now take good care of little Mary. I'll be back in 3 days." And he left the next morning. The same thing happened when it was almost dark. The stepmother came with the basket again and said to Mary, "Put on your cape, put on your boots, take this basket and go and find me blackberries." So Mary did what she was told. Now she knew where to go. She went straight to the part of the forest. There was the bonfire. She found all the 12 elves sitting around it, and they waved hello to her. And January again said, "So Mary, what does she want this time?" "She wants blackberries," said Mary. So January looked over to the circle where October was sitting and said, "October, this is a job for you. Take Mary's basket and bring back blackberries." And whoosh, he disappeared with the basket, and whoosh, he was back again. And the basket was full of the juiciest, sweetest looking blackberries you can imagine. "Now," said January, "October, take a coal from the fire and lead Mary home." And then he looked at Mary and he said, "Mary, you won't be seeing us again after this night, but you'll find that things will go much, much better for you." So she thanked them all and waved goodbye and took the basket, and she followed October, holding up the coal from the fire, all the way back through the woods, and close to the cabin she said goodbye to October and she went inside. The stepmother again was furious to see that she was back, and confused to see that she had actually found the blackberries. And she thought to herself, there's something strange here. So in her sweetest voice, she asked Mary, Mary dear, tell mother where you are finding these beautiful blackberries and the strawberries the other night. Where are they coming from? So Mary, completely guileless, said exactly where they came from. She said, I found a bonfire, and sitting around it were the 12 seasons of the year, the 12 woodland elves. The 12 woodland elves? And what did you ask for? The woman said. I asked for strawberries because that's what you sent me to get, and then I asked for blackberries. And the woman said, you foolish, stupid idiot of a girl. The 12 seasons of the year, those elves, we only get to see them once, if ever, in our lives. And you've seen them twice. You could ask for anything, and all you asked for was berries? Tell me exactly where they are. Mary told her exactly where they were. So she called then to her daughter, get on your cape, get on your boots, we're going immediately. And then she said to Mary, don't you leave the house. And the mother and the stepdaughter, they left and went into the forest and found the fire and found the woodland elves. And January stood up and said, welcome, what can we do for you? The woman said, I want everything I've ever wanted. We can do that for you. What is it exactly that you would want? And the woman said, I want diamonds, pearls, and gold. And January said, we can fix that. And then they looked over at March and said, March, this is a job for you. Can you take them where they can find diamonds, pearls, and gold right now? And March nodded and said, I can. And March began to blow a wind, a strong, cold March wind. And it grew stronger and stronger, and it started to make a whirlwind that grew bigger and bigger, larger and larger, and picked up the woman and her daughter and took them up into the air, all the way up into the heavens, where there are diamonds for stars and the colours of pearl and gold at sunset, the moon, the sun, and there they lived ever after. And Mary never saw the woodland elves again, but true to their word, she was happy and content and at peace, living in the cottage with her father ever after.